I'm Alexander Alec, and this is the Foxfire Podcast, where we explore shamanism, safety, and culture. I'm Alexander Alec. Welcome to the Foxfire Podcast. Today, I'm here with Annika. Hello, Annika.
Hello, Alexander.
Well, we're back. It's been a little while. It feels really good to be back in the recording studio.
It does.
It's been, I don't know how long. I won't even look at the calendar. It's been a while. I've been off on the road. I've been in a ceremony for the last couple of weeks, and really thrilled to be back.
So what have you been up to exactly?
Well, I was back in the United States. I was in northern Utah, and I was at Bear Dance with their Northern Ute.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
It was fantastic. It was really good. Made some new friends and welcomed the spring. And really enjoyed dancing. It was fantastic.
Yes, I saw that picture on Instagram, actually.
There's so much more on YouTube, but let's move on, shall we?
Okay. So in this episode, we're going to tackle safety and how you can stay safe in shamanic work, in rituals, in healings. And that really connects or draws on your work as practitioner and researcher and your focus on safety you have in that work. So we're also going to talk about that, right?
Indeed. We can talk about all those things. And what I'd like to do at the end of the episode is share my favorite list of the ways that you can stay safe while working.
So how did you become interested in shamanism and safety especially?
Well, when I started working with people one-to-one, and had also begun my teaching practice, people started to bring me their stories. And it was really varied, these stories. But what started to happen with time is that I was trusted more and more, and people started to share their more challenging experiences, times of being injured or having, like questionable experiences or experiences they couldn't frame well. And shamanism in this way it's not a direct line out of indigenous work into Western contemporary practice. That's sometimes what people think so, but it's not necessarily, unless it is, but that's for another day. But as it's come into the West, what seems to have not come into the West is the safety values and structures and culture that is normally an indigenous practice. And so these stories came to me, and I started to hear more of them. And I think my biggest moment was really starting to say, why is this happening? When I'm at ceremony, let's say, out in the Southwest, for example, these things rarely happen. And in contemporary Western practice, they seem to happen all the time. I think I've probably heard somewhere in the few thousand stories at this point over the last few decades. And that has really prompted me to look more closely about what's happening and in the West, because I love shamanic practice, and I've been in this work now for many decades, and I would really love that people work and that they're well and that they get a benefit. And so this is what's brought me to looking at safety and basically, how can we do this better in the West?
Do you think you also listen to these stories with a bit of a different ear because of your training and your work in emergency medicine?
Oh, I would absolutely agree with that. Back in the day, I did work in emergency medicine. I did work in the hospitals in total for about 7 years. And the thing in emergency medicine is it is really, really safety conscious. It's really safety conscious, and it has a very very strict set of ethics and protocols, which we follow. And when I came into Western shamanic work, or even around these settings, that was missing. There was no safety awareness or consciousness, and really no worked out ethics. And unfortunately, there still are not.
And would you say, you said in indigenous cultures there is a safety culture and a safety consciousness, but that it may not be so visible to Westerners because it's not in the form of protocols?
Well, that's a good way. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. I think it's so embedded in indigenous cultures because these are things that normally get worked out, not over like a meeting or over a week, but they get worked out over generations, basically. And people know what to expect, and they know what is normal and what is not. They know this because, let's say, their relative was sick and then they went to see the shaman or shamanic practitioner, and they know the outcome of that story and what happened. So that information is passed on, and that's something that we're missing in the West. You might look at somebody and say, well, I don't understand if that was a good thing or a bad thing. I don't understand that person's behavior. Sometimes people will justify it and say, like, well, yeah, but that must be how it is. Or that must be what spiritual looks like. And I would disagree, generally speaking, because again, we haven't worked these things out. So people sometimes behave really badly from my point of view. And other people will say, well, yes, but that's how that is, or that's how that's supposed to be, or we don't know if that's good or bad. And again, this is like a really big missing step. So yeah, it is different. It is embedded, and it has been worked out for generations, hundreds of years, probably longer than that.
Can you give one or two examples?
Sure. Well, one thing that tends to happen, actually, unfortunately, quite a bit, is people will get advice from a shaman or shamanic practitioner that they should stop all their medical treatments that they're currently under. And that can include, like, being diabetic and stopping your insulin, or that could be coming, off your asthma medication or things like this. And what normally comes with that is a message like, trust the work, trust the ceremony, trust the shaman who's doing this. And then, again, we're talking in the West here now, not an indigenous context. That's something different. So they're told, trust the work, give up your medications. And normally what can happen in these situations, people do go into crises, and occasionally they do end up in the hospital if they're lucky, and if they're not lucky, there's a few cases where people have died. One thing that I think is challenging here is these messages that are coming out of indigenous practice, which are things like, well, trust the process, trust the plant, trust the trust this process, and that's not necessarily wrong, but it's being moved just randomly into a Western context where all the safety things around it are not there. They're not embedded. So this is where it's going to get confusing.
And the trust into the process is something that's grown over centuries in indigenous communities, right?
Well, that's correct. And it's also taking responsibility for, your outcomes of your work. If a practitioner is not good within an indigenous community, they're not going to practice very long. That's I think that's something that also gets overlooked in the West. Another thing that I've seen happen quite a bit is either Western practitioners diagnosing people, like specifically with cancer, that's very popular, or telling them that they don't have it, or that the treatment they just received cured it. And unfortunately, what will happen sometimes is people will go with that, and they won't go back to their oncologist, or their doctor and have it checked. I would be thrilled if that happens. And unfortunately, I have had a few people that I've worked with over the years tell me later that they were told by a shaman or shamanic practitioner, and again, this is in the West, that they were cancer-free, for example. And, well, they weren't, and it was too late. And again, those are stories that, that are really difficult, and really difficult for me to carry as a practitioner, because those people died. And that's part of what motivates me or continues to motivate me on this topic, and also in my research, and even making this podcast.
And it got you into your research in the first place?
Well, actually, there was one big case that really gave me a push into my research, and that case, it's in the world, it's in the press. You can look it up on YouTube. But that case is the 2009 incident in Sedona, Arizona. If you're not familiar with it, basically somebody represented themselves as a shaman and took a large number of people. I'm not sure the number exactly. I think it's somewhere between 50 and 60 people into an indigenous ceremony, and some people died in that ceremony. And yeah, this was really a turning point for me, because of being traditionally trained, and also working in the West. I see both sides of things. I've been exposed to both sides of things for quite some time now, and this particular case, for some reason, just really hit home with me. And what happened next was I had a possibility to contribute a chapter on shamanism and safety in a book, in a textbook, and that process of writing that chapter really helped me to clarify for myself how important this topic was, and it also gave me a chance to talk to a lot of people, and really realize how much was missing in the West. How much safety awareness, again, and safety culture was really missing in the West, which again just motivated me even more to continue to talk to people and to look at all of this, as shamanism is growing in the West, really look at it with a really good, I would say, really good critical eye, and say, like, what's working, what's not working, and why is it not working? And that motivated me after that chapter to return again, because I did the chapter at the University of Birmingham, to return there and to do my PhD, which I'm currently completing.
That means we do have to wait a little bit for the results.
A little bit longer, but things are on the way.
And but you mentioned that list. So is that something you can give us in the meantime, that safety list?
Sure, let's do that.
Okay, so why don't I actually start us off with what you taught me early on, what you share with students the most, which is actually the advice to ask yourself, am I safe? Can I work?
Oh, I do say that a lot.
Yes, and it's been very helpful. And so can you explain it a bit more?
Sure. So what I would like to really leave people with today is to make sure, when you're approaching a healing session or a ritual or ceremony, to slow down and reflect on what your intentions are. It's really easy to get very swept away, with sales techniques and what people are, hype, what you've heard or people are trying to sell you. So really make sure to slow down and reflect on your intentions, And when I talk about are you safe and can you work, a big part of that is, checking back in with yourself and how you feel in that situation. That's really, really important. The other thing I would look at also when approaching shamanic work is how much preparation is required. There's always preparation that is required. For example, some of the bigger ceremonies and rituals that we do may take anywhere from 1 or more years to prepare for. This is always a little bit of a shock to me when somebody says, "Oh, I'm going to do this big ceremony," and well, they've never even heard of it, let alone prepared for it, and then they're going to just go and do it on the weekend. So be careful with that. And why so long? I can hear someone say, "Why so long?" Well, to get the depth and the change and the healing, or transformation that you're looking for, takes some time. It takes a lot of preparation and really going into and through a process to get the effect that you're looking for. You can also look at the person or people that are running things. Can you work with them? Are they explaining things to you? Are they helping you get prepared, or are they giving you homework afterward? This is important so you can integrate your experience. I would be really careful if you ask somebody like a leader, lodge leader, or shamanic practitioner, what is it you do or how do you work? And if they say something to the effect of, you wouldn't understand it, I would just say, okay. And if it was me, I'd probably leave. So yeah, if you're working with people, it's important that you get that information so you can participate fully, but also you can give consent. And I think the last thing I want to mention here is, again, it's really, really important to stay with yourself and your feelings. If you feel something is wrong or off, really stay with that. Check that. Try not to go over it. It's really easy to go over our intuition, and usually that does not come out well. So again, make sure to stay with yourself and your feelings in that moment and in that setting. If it's the wrong time, it's the wrong place, or the wrong people, then that's the way it is.
And that's actually a warning sign if people don't give you the space for that, to be with yourself, or if the whole workshop is set up in a way that there's no space to think or to feel or to get a feeling for things.
I absolutely agree.
That's a great starting point, but there's also so much more to talk about in this respect.
That there really, really is. I think what I'd like to do is invite some friends and colleagues to come and join us in the next episodes and get their ideas and their experiences on this topic.
Sounds exciting.
The Foxfire Podcast is hosted and produced by me, Alexander Alec. Co-hosted by Annika Berman. This season's theme by Century Music. Special thanks to Kati Meaden and Christian Roth at goyippie.net, Ellie Hale and Rhiannon Morgan at University of Birmingham, and to the whole team at the Foxfire Foundation in Berlin, Germany. You can find us at Apple Podcasts, foxfirepodcast.com, or on your favorite app. If you like our show, please subscribe, follow, or we'd love some stars and a review. For our release schedule and behind-the-scenes pics, we're on Instagram at Foxfire Podcast. Until next time.